various toys that we have in the back. So this quick slide here, a little bit of history. We've been trying to measure the brain for many years. On the left is the first version of a poor man's fNIR system, where you're looking at blood volume changes and how it tips the scale when somebody's sitting on a scale. So they give them a task, and when they think harder about it, blood flows to their brain. Then there was the first human EEGs in the early 1920s. Now we have such extensive equipment like MRIs allows you to do fMRI or PSI, but those are not really wearable solutions. There is positron emission tomography, which wasn't portable until NIH funded a portable version of it. There is magnetoencephalography, which measures the magnetic fields of the electrical activities in the brain, which wasn't portable, or is it wearable? So technologies has been moving towards taking people into realistic environments so that we can really start to understand what is happening inside our brain in the real world, as opposed to limited experimental situations. Tonight we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about functional near-infrared. This is the most wearable version of a sensor. We are not going to be talking about implantables, because the idea is that something you can wear is something you can unwear, whereas implantables are not, although they give good signals. We will be talking about EEG. So briefly, I'll start now on EEG. EEG is the electrical activity of the brain that we can measure on the scalp. When enough neurons in a particular area fire together, the postsynaptic potentials sum, creating local field potentials, which can aggregate and we can measure them from the surface of the scalp. Typically, to measure EEG, you need to abrade the scalp, remove this layer of dead cells that create micro cracks on the skin, put some gel, put the electrodes that look like these electrodes in the middle, called cup electrodes, glue them really well onto the head, and then amplify the signals. You get signals that look like something on the left over here. This is an illustration that shows you that by looking at the traces of EEG, we're able to get some information about the states of the mind. So we can see aroused, relaxed, asleep, and easy. Most of the time, we don't analyze EEG data in this format. We analyze the data in Fourier domain. So we take the data, we convert it into the Fourier domain, and analyze it in power bands. So you'll hear us talking about delta, theta, alpha. Those are just power bands of EEG. When people look at different sensor modalities, we typically tend to assign this, group them by spatial resolution and temporal resolution, which is fine, provides some information about the speed of the signals that we can measure or how localized they are. There are a few additional parameters that are important for experimentalists, which have to do about price, which have to do with ease of use, which have to do with availability, robustness to motion artifacts, and portability. So when we look at all those factors, we see that EEG and fNIR have a lot of pluses. And when we group them together, we merge them, we start to see some useful combinations coming about between those technologies. At this point, I'm going to introduce our dry electrode technology. So I'm going to introduce Marissa, who is carrying one of our headsets. This is called the DSI-24. We'll introduce that in a little bit. And Marissa is going to set up the headset by herself while I continue talking, and then we will show you what that looks like. So EEG is so great, why isn't everybody using it? There are some limitations to the technology, having to do with the fact that most conventional EEG requires skin abrasion and gel. Signals are not so straightforward to analyze. It requires some synchronous time locking and some advanced signal analysis. And conventionally, EEG is not seen as really portable. There's a lot of motion artifacts that can get introduced. There's a lot of equipment that tends to be needing to be carried. So we'll show you what we've done. So we received funding, a lot of funding from the government over the past 20 years with the goal of developing what was referred to as the holy grail of EEG, a dry electrode system. So the mission was no skin preparation, no gel, no liquids. So we took sensors that we had developed for measuring charge in the sky and underground. They're called capacitive sensors. We added some pins to them so we could get resistive contact on the scalp and go through hair. And we obtained a dry EEG. And the sponsor said, okay, that's great. You're telling us you have dry EEG, but we're not willing to sacrifice on signal quality. So we spent a lot of time doing some experiments side by side, wet and dry electrodes, simultaneously recorded, to see what is the signal quality that we're getting. I'll show you a few more figures. This is an alpha wave recording, so when you close your eyes, you generate alpha waves. And you can see our hybrid electrodes, our dry electrodes, are matching very well with the wet electrode. So this is getting better 90% correlations, and this was a great, nice demonstration that we're getting the same signals. I'll show you a few more the signal quality slides in a second. They said, okay, great, you're getting good signal quality, but we hear that dry electrodes have a lot of artifacts. And that was true. There were two sources of artifacts for electrodes. One were electrical artifacts because we didn't rub the skin, we had a high impedance contact, so that picks up a lot of artifacts from the environment. And the other one is motion artifacts, and the electrodes are not glued down, so they tend to slide. So we spent some time designing the electronics and the mechanics of the system. So here's one example, a few examples in one illustration. This is the sensor, this is the electrode, and the material is silver chloride, so that's good for low noise. And immediately behind the electrode we put the amplifier. An ultra-high impedance amplifier that allows us to amplify these signals despite the high impedance that we're getting at the skin. To protect our system from getting noise from the environment, we put a Faraday cage. Everything you see here in this back plane is a Faraday cage. It clamps together around the sensor. So now the only place, so a Faraday cage is a shield, electrical shield, that protects us from the environmental pickup. So now the only place the signal can come in is from the bottom, which is where the head will be. So now it gets amplified before it goes out to the headset where it gets digitized. The other little element here you see in purple is a spring. So I'm going to pass around some sensors, and what I would like you to do with this is put it on your hand and wiggle it a little bit and see how this inner spring, this inner electrode stays very put around your skin while the outer one moves. Of course, if you move it this much, everything will move, but within a few millimeters, that allows us, if you move a little bit, the headset's movement will be compensated for by this electrode, by this spring. So we were starting to be able to get up and walk. Then he said, okay, that's fantastic, but to make it really useful after this dry electrode, it needs to be easy to be put on. It needs to be so that it's fast to be put on by a soldier, and they could be wearing it all day long without pain. So I'm going to pass another sensor, the bigger one. I'd invite you to take the bigger one, not the smaller one, the second one you're going to get. Put that on your head and push as hard as you want. If any of you have lice, do not put it on your head, just pass it to the next person. So just put it on your head and push it as hard as you want and feel the comfort. Why is that important? The whole reason we're going to dry electrodes is to have a comfortable, convenient experience. If it's painful, you've just defeated the purpose. Might as well rub your skin and put a gel electrode on. So we solved that, as hopefully you will attest for yourselves. And the combination of these things provided us an ambulatory high tolerance system that you could get up, put on by yourself and get up and walk. And in a second, Marissa's going to get up and show you what that looks like. So of course we put a version in a military helmet for our military sponsors, but we're selling versions that are not. So this is a little bit more signal quality that I promised. So here's some eyes open data, some eyes closed data, some blinks for the EEG aficionados, showing that we are getting truly the same signals in both wet and dry. Here's some evoked potentials showing the amplitude and the shape and morphology of the pre and post trigger events are the same. And here is a power spectrum showing that we're getting the same comparable spectra on the wet and the dry. So I'm going to fly over to the next slide. So in summary, we have high fidelity, artifact-free dry sensor. It's practical and comfortable, fast to set up, and ambulatory. We're going to cover that we have a few different systems that are going to be shown in the back. The DSI-24, which Marissa is wearing, that's our flagship product with 19 electrodes. We have a 7-channel version, and both of these have child-sized versions of them. The child is not included. There is a version that is for researchers who really want the freedom, flexibility of putting sensors wherever they want. We do not have one of those here today. However, we do have a version that is designed for sleep monitoring. Somebody was asking a little bit earlier, these are sensors that are on the front. They're a very comfortable headset that you can wear and go to sleep, and it stays on your head all night. We have a version that you'll see in the back as well. It has a virtual reality headset attached to it so that you can do experiments in virtual reality. And the two are interfaced via an API that's developed by a company called Neurobull, not to be confused with Neurocool. And they developed some algorithm that allows you to take the EEG data, pass it into a Unity or Unreal, so virtual reality environment, so that you can do experiments in there and do time synchronizations for them. The headset itself is designed for P300, so all the electrode locations are in the back of the head. I'm not going to, if you'd like to see, you're going to see the VR demonstration, so I'm going to skip over the video tonight. What are some of the applications or some of the questions that get asked? Of course, every researcher that we sold the system to is pretty much doing their own research. So research cannot get classified into a specific application, just broadly research. However, beyond research, we have people that are doing things in neurofeedback. We're able to sell for neurofeedback with training, peak performance training, guided meditation, neuromarketing, neuroeducation. All of these things require high signal fidelity and an easy to put on system that's comfortable to use, that takes away the scope and complexity of brain measurement and brings it out to the real world. So we are hoping that you guys as researchers keep developing these applications so that we can take them out and make a lot of money. No, so and serve the world for the greater good. Okay, so the next technology I'm going to spend a little bit more time on is so we're going to talk a little bit about functional near infrared. Functional near infrared is a measurement of blood oxygenation in the brain. So as your brain, neurons, so whereas EEG was electrical activity, this is a measure of the oxygen. So as your brain areas get activated, they deplete the oxygen, which then calls up for more oxygen to come in. So we can look at the absorption of and diffraction of near infrared light, which passes through the skull from the emitter, goes through the skull and through the brain tissue and gets diffracted back to the detector. Depending on how much oxygenated hemoglobin, the absorption of light at different frequencies changes, and we can resolve that and get a measure of fNIR. So what we've done is we've combined an fNIR technology with our dry electrode technology to produce a hybrid fNIR EEG system, where I will pass this pod around. You will see our electrodes in the center, and around it is an array of emitters and detectors, which we will be showing you in a little bit. So you'll see this is the pod that's being sent around. It's quite comfortable. It goes through hair, so we're able to deal with hair. Hair often absorbs light, so we're able to deal with that. We have put in very, very, very bright emitters and very, very sensitive detectors so that we can get signals to pass through and make the measurements that we need. We also put in 4 emitters and 4 detectors at each location. That's to ensure that we can put it on quickly. There's redundancy in the system to make sure that we get the optimal path selected by the software to make sure that we are seeing the signal that we care about. But we also are able to measure 2 measurements in this every time, a short distance and a long distance. The long distance path is where the brain signal will matter. The short distance path allows us to measure this superficial artifact, which is called a Mayer wave. And then we can do regressions, as I'll show you in the next slide, and remove this artifact. So we didn't invent this regression method. These were methods that were published. We just are able to implement them in one system. And you can see that when you apply the short distance and the long distance and regress it, you get much cleaner signal. And in our system, what this looks like is as follows. So you can see that there's a slow frequency signal that's going up and undulating. And when you filter that out by regressing it out, you get a very nice clean sharp spot. So what you're seeing here in the green bar is when you've asked the person to activate the task. So this could be a finger tapping or a grid, and you can see the rise in the oxygenated hemoglobin following the onset, and then when you stop the task, it starts to go down. And this is the arrangement of our electrodes and the various spacings of emitters and detectors and the spacings that they get. So it's important when you have a combined system to make sure they don't interfere with one another. So on the left side, we're showing an EEG recording without shielding. When the fNIR light emitters pulse, you can see these large spikes. That would destroy your EEG signal. So what we did is, because of our nice Faraday cage, we're able to shield the EEG sensors and separate them from one another, and now we are immune. So now the EEG signal is not affected by the fNIR signal. We can measure the two at the same time without interference. Of course, the same is true for the fNIR. Here are some fNIR measurements, and in the yellow spot is where we turn off the EEG recording, and then we continue recording the fNIR, and there is no change in the distribution of the data before or after the EEG is turned off. So the EEG is not affecting the others. We can collect the data in software where we record the EEG and fNIR at the same time. They're both digitized at the same time. This is important because this allows us to do things that cannot be done if you record things separately, such as neurovascular coupling. What does that mean? It means that your brain activity has an electrical component and blood oxygenation component. Now we can look at the relation between the two. So for example, stroke. Stroke is a result of a hemodynamic event that leads to brain damage. If you're trying to assess that, you need to look at both things. If you're trying to do neurorehabilitation, whether it be through physical therapy or through pharmacology, you want to see these changes and what is happening first. How are the changes happening on the hemodynamic side, and how are the changes happening on the brain activity side? Now you can start to do things by looking at them simultaneously and trying to be involved and understand the relationship between them. Our headset looks as follows. This is currently still a prototype format. We have one in the back. We'll be turning it on and showing you how that works. It has 8 pods on it, each one with 4 emitters, 4 detectors, for a total of 32 emitters, 32 detectors. The signals that we get after processing look like so. So you can see when there's a motor task being activated and the person is tapping their finger or clenching their hand, and during the green bars, we can see the oxygenated area going up. And when they stop, it settles down, and you can look at the deoxygenated and the oxygen. If we're looking on the motor cortex, if we ask the person to do a visual task and we look at the motor cortex, we don't see a response. It just talks about the specificity of the localization of the ethers. So this was me introducing our technologies. So those will be in the back, and now I'll introduce my colleague Shashan from CEO of Neuroscience, who will tell you about their technology.